there's positives and negatives of that, because you can end up with a client who's just, on Midjourney all day, sending you thousands of images, and some of them may not be realistic to all the other complex constraints we spoke about. So
Right, you're getting like an oblong in the sky
yeah,
hanging off a giant.
yeah, and you're like, the floats, you can't have that. Sorry, mate.
Hi, and welcome to It's Not the End of the World, Everyday Use Cases for AI. My name is Bobby McCloudich, and I'm the head of AI integration here at Quite Frankly Productions in New York City. I'm also the creative director and a former teacher. I've always had a bit of an interest in new technologies, which is why this podcast exists. We're talking to people from across industries about how they're using AI in their day-to-day workflows and lives. Today, I have an architect on the show. His name's Peter Williams, and he's based in Vancouver. Peter, thank you for joining me on the show.
Hey, thanks, Bobby. Good to be here.
All right, could you give me a bit of a context about who you are and how you got to be where you are?
Yep. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an architect. I'm qualified in the UK and then moved over to North America. Made the leap across the pond about 7 years ago. So there's a bit of a kind of a transition when you move over, kind of slightly different systems. But yeah, so I've been settled here for 7 years, and I work for a large firm in North America, and then I do some kind of freelance side projects as well,
Okay,
architecture related. So
and architecture is it's one of those aspirational jobs that we all hear about. A few kids in the class put it down as their dream job when they're little, but when I think about it, I don't even know what the day-to-day looks like for an architect. So maybe you can help us understand what your day-to-day job looks like.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people bring that up actually, that they're not that sure what you actually do. Essentially, it's ideas, it's creating spaces, and it's resolving those ideas to something that can be formed into reality. So there's lots of separate zones that you can specialize into. So I guess in terms of the topic of AI, there's many niches and areas that it can evolve and changes, and it's very specific, but it depends on the, the general part.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine there are lots of areas that AI could weave its magic in your profession. But still, just to kind of like you sort of gave me still gave me some fairly sort of nebulous ideas there.
Yeah, sure.
Like we turn ideas into reality.
Yeah.
But like, what actually do you do? Maybe you just tell me like what did your day look
Yeah.
like today? What did you do today?
I mean, today it depends what stage in a project. So at an early stage, you're effectively trying to understand the client's needs in terms of a space or a building or a place, and then you're turning that brief into a story or an image or something that you can sell and talk about, and then later throughout a project, it's eventually developing that design with in terms of fabrication and trades, and how you might actually build that on a particular site, or it may not be a building. It could be something more abstract than that. So I guess for me, in terms of today, we're on CA on a project, which means it's there's a hole in the ground, and we're working with the trades on how to actually build the project. So we're reviewing drawings and kind of trying to understand the design three-dimensionally to ensure that we're not going to have certain problems when we're on site, and then it could be harder to resolve those issues. So it's quite different between earlier stage and later stage in terms of what you're doing as a day-to-day on the job. So
Got it. How many people are on your team doing that at the moment?
directly, there's just three or four of us right now in our office.
Okay.
But in terms of the wider team, there's the contractor and there's the client and a lot of other people involved. So
Sure.
it's a team, a team
Okay.
job usually. So
So where you are right now, there's three or four of you. You got a hole in the ground. You're reviewing drawings. You're reviewing the site, and you're trying to make sure, and you're also trying to turn this into a 3D model that you can then conceptualize a little bit more clearly to get the idea across to
yeah,
all
I
the
mean,
respective stakeholders.
yeah, typically you'd usually always have a 3D or be working in three-dimensionally. It could be model making, it could be a digital model, and then there's lots of other, I guess, developments in the profession in the last, 10 to 20 years in terms of we have like a digital twin, which is like it can be called a digital twin, which is a separate model, which can be, a 3D virtual representation of an actual building. So you usually have models, but they have different functions throughout the process of building.
Okay, you usually have models, they have different functions throughout the process, including twins and other types of
Yeah.
models.
Yeah, so like I mean, at early stages, you might just want to make a quick model to understand a problem or a certain aspect of the design, and then later on, it becomes more a store of information of data that can be useful for like more and more stakeholders outside of just your office. So there's a whole topic of model sharing and information, which is usually termed as BIM, building information modeling in our industry. And then so there's kind of a current crossover with AI and those topics at the moment.
Okay, all right, we'll come to that. But I'm still very interested in just understanding your job. So
Yeah.
it
Okay.
must be a broad spectrum of. I'm imagining you must be involved. Okay, so obviously the layman's idea is like, okay, he's building models and designing them in
Yeah.
whatever software he uses, and maybe he's
Yeah.
also actually physically building the models. But I
Yeah.
imagine there must be this crossover into all sorts of other areas like legal,
Yeah.
engineering,
Exactly.
like compliance of the
Yeah.
environment and the city. Is that all
Yeah.
true?
Yes. Yeah. So the other aspects are legal compliance. There's regulatory frameworks, so you have to make sure the building or the design is going to be able to meet standards and codes. Environmental expectations, which has progressed in a lot the last 20, 10, 20 years. So effectively, it's combining a lot of different requirements and kind of prioritizing and finding the solution that's best for the specific project and brief.
I mean, an architect must be.
Too abstract still.
No, no, not at all. Actually, that's very specific, I think, and it's
Okay.
just striking me just how broad the skill set required to be an architect is. I'm thinking about my own job and industry. We can have like really skilled artists, and they can
Yeah.
focus on doing the animation, or they can focus on, we can have a really skilled editor, and all they need to focus on is building out the edit timeline. They don't need to really worry about, I don't
Yeah.
know, the legal ramifications of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it sounds like to me, is every architect just like a jack of all trades? Uh,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's as a profession, it's generalist. It's having an understanding of a broad spectrum of topics. You don't have to know the answer to everything, but you need to know where to look or who to ask. So that's the generic role, and then people gradually, regularly specialize more into certain topics. So it could be digital fabrication, it could be environmental side of, or it could be the legal, it could be contracts. So people tend to specialize, and then there's also just more generalist architects.
what's your specialty?
I've stayed pretty general, pretty broad. I've done a lot of different project types and different stages, so I've kept myself very general, I guess is the way to describe it. But other, friends and colleagues, people tend to specialize in particular areas, environmental topics, contract law, that kind of stuff. But it depends on the individual, really. So
Got it. And that can help you be a director, I suppose, and direct an entire project.
yeah, yeah, it helps, I think, to have a good understanding of all the various stages and not going too specific or niche early on in your career. I think is something that can be helpful. So
Okay. Well, that
yeah.
must also give you a broad overview of how AI is impacting all of these various different silos within your profession. So, if you like that segue, uh, this is your opportunity now to tell me a little bit about how AI is showing up in your work.
I mean, it's kind of I guess it's a very broad topic, just like the profession. So um, I guess you're most interested to know in terms of day to day how I'm using it, or
Yeah, I am. We can go anywhere we like with this, and I respect your observation. Yes, it
Yeah.
is super broad, and I could imagine, much like in medicine, there are specific, machine learning algorithms applied to solving protein folding. Um,
Mm,
but but then there's also doctors that are using large language models to transcribe the notes of their patients. We could go in all sorts of different directions. So
mm,
I guess just begin with whatever just naturally occurs to you. I'm
yeah.
struck by when we met, I remember, and I asked you to be on the show. The
Yeah.
first thing you said was, "Oh yeah, I used it and it helped me do a project I would never have been able to do
Yeah.
without it." So, maybe start there. That was the thing you were kind of inspired to tell me about over dinner. So, let's hear about
Yeah.
that.
I think it gives the opportunity for smaller offices to have a wider range of resources at their disposal. It allows access and to knowledge a lot quicker, I guess, than before. So previously, maybe you'd have to research or have a much bigger team that could advise on a project. But if you if you're able to trust the information you're receiving, then the there's a huge potential for growth of smaller offices and smaller individuals to be able to achieve a lot more due to the access to information that it provides, quick access to
Hmm.
information.
Interesting. Okay, give me a bit more of a specific there. Like, are you talking about using a large language model?
Yeah, I guess large language model. I guess the example would be in terms of regulatory frameworks, you're able to search a lot quicker in terms of understanding the requirements that you may need to meet for a building in a certain location. So you can use it like an assistant to kind of come back to your desk to give you information on what the requirements are, which will allow you to design a lot quicker. So that's something that I found when I was using more AI on a project recently myself.
Give me a bit more detail on that. So you were working on a project and you didn't have the resources of a bigger team, and so
Yeah,
you were able to find the information you needed to help you progress.
yeah. So I worked on a project in Ireland, which is under a different framework of regulation. So there's there's a degree of risk and a level of understanding you need to kind of put time into understanding the environment and the constraints in terms of various aspects. So not just regulatory, but the environment and understanding the site. And so the time that it takes to do that typically would be a lot longer, but I was able to use large language model to give me a lot of information and give me a lot of input on specific knowledge that I don't have already, you know, me personally. So it reduced the amount of research I needed to do on a project and allowed me to work on a project in a different jurisdiction.
Interesting. Well, can I ask you a question then? Just off mic, actually, you were just talking about hallucinations,
Oh yeah,
um, and I wonder, like, how do you deal with the fact that it's not always 100% reliable if it's you're researching an area that, I presume with architecture, you
yeah.
can't you can't afford a mistake.
Yeah, it's I mean I guess that's the aspect that was the drawback of this process when I decided to test out how much it could help me on a personal project that I was working on. And so I actually ended up having to spend a lot of extra time to check the information it was giving me manually the normal way that I would do things, but I could at least see the advantages as it improves, as the language model improves, the advantages it could give me in terms of time. So I did save a lot of time that I maybe wouldn't have been able to take on the project, but it wasn't as efficient as I think it could be as things develop or the reliability or trust develops.
Right, interesting. So kind of where it currently is, because it's not reliable, you still have to spend a lot of time doing the legwork, just
Manual checking.
checking its work. But I
Yeah,
suppose in a certain type of way, it's kind of like, so I've had a lawyer on the podcast, and it's the same, right? They have to be like super buttoned up, and but they save a crazy amount of time because the AI is acting like a junior associate and doing a
yeah,
whole bunch of research, and then
yeah,
they check the research,
exactly.
but it's quicker to check the research than it is
Yeah.
to do the research from scratch. Is that essentially the same thing
Yeah.
that you're saying?
Yeah, it's very much the same thing. Like it felt like, you're using it like an assistant who has a certain level of knowledge, and then you have an overbearing kind of understanding of what you need to look out for in their work essentially. So I think it is important who is using the model, because if you don't have the backbone, the background knowledge on what to check, then things can slip through and those mistakes can, follow through, and there's legal ramifications of it. So
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's like it's such a truism. The I think we're definitely beyond phase one or even phase two of like AI becoming integrated in people's lives. But
yeah,
initially, in that in early phases, you may remember people afraid for their jobs, obviously, but also kind of skeptical about it for some reason. But those of us that use it realize that you have to have, as you say, a backbone of knowledge.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's kind of useless. And you certainly can't just copy and paste an answer and take it as verbatim and just
yeah,
use it. You need to exercise your own personal professional judgment. And I'm starting to see now, interestingly, I'm starting to see professionals using AI, and there's this kind of, I suppose, a relationship between me and the professional that we both know that they're using it, but that's
yeah, yeah,
okay, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's come up for me in two healthcare situations, both with my child. We've got a newborn son; he's like 7 months old, and
lovely.
our pediatrician was talking us through. He'd recorded all of our calls over the course of 6 months, and he
Yeah,
had used ChatGPT, I think, to summarize our conversations. But then rather than like pretending that it was like his what do you want to call it, his insights, he was reading out, he'd prepared a presentation, but was reading out ChatGPT's sort of
summary
insights.
of, yeah, insights.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And it was kind of like, I knew it was ChatGPT, but it was
yeah,
okay because it was being validated by my pediatrician, by a professional. And so he was,
yeah. That's a
and
good
he,
point.
and he was being transparent, and it wasn't like he was hiding it. He was being super transparent. And
Yeah,
it caught me, it made me think, okay, I think this is maybe like the next sort of, that's how to, I don't know, it said something to
yeah.
me about
It's it,
transparency.
is kind of vouching for it, or being open that this is information, this is a tool that we're using, and this is what it's given us. And as the expert, I can analyze and simplify or adjust it for you. I think that's kind of the direction that you can kind of see it going in a lot of industries, because you know you give a degree of credibility, right, from your knowledge and being able to analyze if it's made mistakes or things that you would disagree with, because it's not necessarily always correct, but you have the expertise to advise on the output it gives, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess I kind of hope that as you and I both know, you the professional and me the customer, both know that this is what we're working with and we both understand how it works. We
Yeah.
can both be able to keep an eye out for hallucinations or sort of
Yeah.
weird oddities and work together to then get to the end goal.
Yeah. I mean, one area where it's definitely, it's more the client is more, has access to more tools that can, Midjourney can produce these images and quickly share them and say, this is what I want, or I like this. So
Mm,
there's a different way of being able to communicate, because previously, let's say you've got a client who wants something, they can describe it in words, they can find a picture from a magazine and say, I want something like this, but maybe change it this way. Now, now there's the ability to have more control over the images that they can share in terms of their desires and what they want from a project. So that's one key difference, which
oh,
I think has its benefits, and there's positives and negatives of that, because you can end up with a client who's just on Midjourney all day sending you thousands of images, and some of them may not be realistic to all the other complex constraints we spoke about. So
right, you're getting like an oblong in the sky
yeah.
hanging off a
Yeah, and you're like, the
tiny.
floats, you can't have that. Sorry, mate.
That's interesting though. So you're getting clients who are now using generative AI to generate images for
I'm
inspiration?
not specifically, but I know I've had conversations with people, and it's more available. They're aware of what you can do with it. So I think that's a bit of the challenge is how that relates to our job and how we communicate with other consultants and clients is what's changing. So
Interesting. Do you take any inspiration from any of those tools? Is that part of your workflow?
yeah, I've experimented with that. So it's useful for you can do quick image generation. A lot of it depends on your control. If you've got control of it, which is obviously learning the tool. I mean, our industry has had various tools come along, they're probably the same as yours, and so we're used to learning them. I think as long as you treat it as a tool, then it can help serve you. But the moment it's taking control and it's designing things for you is when you've got to kind of question what are you trying to make or achieve or build. So
And
yeah, it's a long topic.
right, which tools are you experimenting with out of curious, or have you experimented with any that have been the good and the bad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm testing a few out. I think I've used Midjourney a bit, and then another kind of specific architectural software where you upload sketches and it can create a 3D, rendered image. It's useful for rendering in particular. So that that's a process that could take a lot of time, or used to 10, 15 years ago take a lot of time and money to do, and now it's able to speed that up, tenfold. So
Huh. Well, is that an AI powered tool?
yeah, there's a few various websites where you can upload sketches of buildings and have a bit more specific control over things.
Interesting. Any names that you'd say were worth checking out if our listeners are particularly interested in diving deep into the architectural design
Yeah,
world?
yeah, a website I've been using specifically is LookX.ai. So you
LookX.ai.
LookX.ai, yeah.
Okay.
So you can do sketches and upload them, and it will create an image. There's a lot out there, so I'm not vouching to say that's the best one out there, but it's one that I was experimenting with quite early on. And then actually I used that website actually to enter a competition with a friend of mine, and we came runners up. Or sorry,
Okay.
joint winners. Sorry,
Joint winners.
joint
But
winners. Yeah.
you consider yourself a runner up though,
Well,
because
yeah, I think there's two of us. For some reason, I
yeah,
think it's runners up. But
unless you're first, you're
yeah,
last.
yeah, exactly.
No, that's cool. That's interesting. And okay, question that
So this was a
immediately
couple
goes
of
to my
years
head.
ago. Yeah.
Okay, is there any like so-called cheating because you used Look.ai, or is there would your competitors have felt that that was dishonest? And I'm not trying to catch you out. I'm just
No,
interested
no.
in what the landscape looks like in
Yeah,
in your business.
I know. Yeah, I think at the time when I did it, this was a couple of years ago. It hadn't. We weren't really sure what people thought of using it. There wasn't any. It wasn't as commonly used. I feel like the industry is more familiar with using it now. But at that time on that project, we were unsure what people would think of us using AI on it.
Were you
So it was a
transparent
bit of a
about it,
test.
or were you just
No, we
you
didn't
just
hide it. We just
right?
submitted our design, and it wasn't fully AI. We did some stuff the usual way of hand sketching and making our own model, and then there was some stuff where we made the images by putting in projects that me and my friend had both designed ourselves. We inputted those two images of two buildings that we both done, and it created like an amalgamation, and then that became the basis of our submission. So
Cool. Okay. I mean, that sounds like exactly how people are using it today. I feel like
y-
2 years ago, that might have been the sort of thing that people that didn't understand the process would have been
yeah,
like, oh, that's cheating, it's bullshit. Whereas
yeah, yeah,
now it sounds to me like that's very clearly what AI is, right? It's a tool that you have to
yeah.
put a good, for want of a better word, a prompt. You have created an
We didn't put a good
amazing.
prompt.
Right, yeah, they say
Yeah.
garbage in, garbage out, but you've put good quality stuff into it, and you've got a good quality result out of it that
Yeah,
made you joint winner,
yeah,
not
yeah. I
not
think
sole winner, but
not soul winner, so
sure.
obviously there was something wrong with it. Um, but I mean, the other joint winner, his submission was very different approach. It was, I think it was a lot of written. It was just very different presentation. And he obviously came up with some really interesting ideas that the judges were also interested in. And ours just was more image and idea based that we presented well because we used these tools. And I guess they both like the two aspects, or maybe they recognized that we were using AI and that's why it was a joint winner. I don't know the
Right,
backstory on it.
right.
So
Interesting.
yeah,
I'm conscientious that we've got 20 minutes left, but I'm really
yeah,
curious. Like, if you would you be able to? Do you have that to hand? Would you be able to screen share and
yeah,
show me it?
yeah. I do actually.
Amazing. All right. This is will be the first screen share by a guest on the podcast. So, Pete, you have that distinct honor. And for our listeners who are only listening, I will do an incredible job of articulating what I'm seeing
Okay, well,
on the
I have to
screen.
figure out how to screen share.
There should be a
Which
button at the bottom. There's a share button on my side. I don't know if you've got it on yours. All right, here we go. This is new.
there we go.
This is new bloody territory that's being explored. All right. So I'm seeing what looks like a lot of to my eye, they kind of look Midjourney like. And then I'm also seeing
Yep.
some sketches. So what part of this, where did the AI come into it?
So yeah, a lot of these are mid-journeys. So the tower kind of image just then, these images, that was where we combined our two projects um, to create the images for the project. And then there's the kind of master plan scale image that was done by us inputting a 3D model. So
Okay.
this one here,
So that this 3D model that I'm looking at, just hover on that for a second.
yeah,
That is not AI.
that is a digital model we made by hand, by computer, by software, extruding blocks and making streets.
Okay, so that's an old
And
school
so
method of doing
yeah,
the job.
exactly. And then
Hmm.
that was then we then used that as the basis
Hmm.
and uploaded it effectively for kind of the presentation for the rendering. I mean, it's not perfect. We didn't have the creative control that we wanted, but it was a good enough starting point to get put forward our ideas,
Got it.
basically.
Okay, then scroll. Give me another one. Show me something else that is not AI. So
Well, the
firstly,
sketches
I'm
definitely
looking at,
aren't.
I'm just give the audio. So
Yeah,
we were looking at a 3D model that looked like it had been done in, some sort of rendering engine that was
yeah,
traditional. Now we're looking at some bird's eye view sketches that are very much hand drawn with handwritten notes.
yeah. These are all well, actually, these were done by Jamie Eden, and these were done on his iPad, so he likes to work that way. So
Okay.
we didn't use any AI on this, but it's actually a slightly different workflow than
Okay, so we've got a
a lot of
concept
architects
sketch, and
use.
I can see a bird's eye view of what I was looking at in 3D. And so
Yep.
now, so did you put all of this information into your AI engine?
Effectively, not directly all of these. We actually didn't need to upload all of these. The one on the far right hand side, that is an outline of that 3D image that you saw earlier. So it's from the same.
You know what? Hang tight on this. While you're doing this,
Yeah.
I'd like to see how Nano Banana handles this. So
Okay.
while you're, do you know Nano Banana?
Yeah, I've been messing around with that recently.
Okay, and do you get any, have you had any good results?
Actually, no, I
Oh,
couldn't.
interesting.
I hit a bit of a dead end on it.
I'm wondering whether it could do what I've heard that it's got some architectural um, chops, so to
Hmm.
speak. And
Hmm.
I'm wondering if I put in that bird's eye view
Mm.
and put in the 3D model, whether it would be able to turn it into. So go to the next slide, the 3D model. I wonder whether it can turn it into the render. So you took the blueprints, the top-down drawings, the handwritten drawn sketches. You took the 3D model that you built, and then it created this image that I'm looking at now, and which is like a beautiful
Well,
Midjourney like image. What do you call that? So in terms of
this is
vocabulary?
a this is a rendering. So this is a rendering of more of the streetscape or a finer grain of the project. I think the reason it worked or we were able to use it for this project was because it was more of a master plan. It was more about public realm and density and cityscapes, and we weren't designing the specifics of the building. This is just to put forward kind of an idea of what a space or place could be like. So it was kind of a different type of competition to maybe if you're designing just a specific building, you'd then have a different approach of how you'd use AI.
Okay, interesting. All right. And so you call it a render. All right. Well,
Yeah,
so
that's what I do.
so in the background. So if you stop sharing, I'll show you what I've just done, and
Okay.
we'll see. We'll just see if it comes out. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's go into Gemini. So I have just taken a screenshot of the top-down view, and
Hmm.
I took a screenshot of the 3D render. I said, can you turn these sketches and models into a render for my architectural friend who wants to explore the use cases for his profession? Okay.
Wow. There we
What,
go.
what do you think of that? Is that,
It's better. I mean, it's improved in 2 years, hasn't it?
you tell me what, like, I'm
Well,
looking at
there's no
that.
lake. There's no lake over. There's no river over that side, but
Okay.
the quality's good. Very good.
It's added a lake.
Yeah,
Um, is it accurate to what it looks similar to the design
it's
from what,
similar. Yeah, it's similar in terms of the massing. And I mean, for this entry, it wasn't necessarily about the specifics and the details. It was about creating courtyard spaces and certain massing and blocking, which this image shows. So we were able to use it a couple of years ago because we it, we were okay with allowing it to have a little bit of creative freedom, which I think some architects would disagree with that and think that's blasphemy. But
right?
it served the purpose of us being able to quickly enter a competition with
Right. It's
ideas that we had.
more like a proof of concept, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is very much what this is all about, isn't it? We could carry on going down this thread, but I'm conscious of your time. I'm very interested in other things we could do with this. I've heard that it can do very good, like line. Is it called line drawings or like
Yeah, line work. Yeah,
line
yeah.
work? I don't know if that's a thing or
Yeah,
uh,
like sketches. You can do. I mean, we all before AI was a buzzword. We could always create sketches from 3D models. There's
okay.
filters or export settings that you can do. Um, so stylizing images, it's improved a lot, but we've always had tools to do
Right. It's funny.
things.
It's funny, isn't it? It's just, people just want to use AI for everything, and
It's
so
quite a
it's like,
buzzword, isn't it?
yeah, it is, and there's a lot of snake oil around as a result.
Yeah,
But the proof of concept bit is real, and you said that, and I'm starting to work on vibe coding, um, and
heard about that. Yeah,
you're starting to realize, oh, I can like build an app, and then sometimes it's just as a proof of concept, it's it's
yeah,
90% of the way there. In fact,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I've built apps at work that we use now
Mm,
because it's good enough for work. It might not be good enough to like put out into the world as a
yeah,
consumer facing product,
yeah,
but I have no doubt that if I wanted to go and seek investment and say, hey, I think I've got a functioning product here that we could sell,
yeah,
then I can create, much like what you said about how some clients are coming with mid-journey images. I can now come with a fully functional app that I built in my AI and
yeah,
then get some professionals to actually turn it into a viable product.
yeah. It kind of makes the regular individual more. There's more opportunity to share and present their ideas because if you go back to if we go back to architects traditionally, the way that people would communicate would be drawing by doing a sketch, and then that's seen as a good way to communicate because it's very quick and direct. But what I think, and we're talking about AI, we're getting better at communicating with computers, and so we're able to share ideas in a different way than just sketching. So
Yeah. And it also brings me back to what you said at the beginning of this conversation, which sort of struck a nerve maybe struck a nerve is not the right word, but it triggered a kind of a something I've been percolating on, which I'm noticing in a trend, I guess, that I'm seeing in all of these
Yeah,
conversations, which
yeah,
is that it's empowering individuals and smaller organizations, those that don't have the resources to compete with much bigger organizations, to do more. And
definitely. I think so.
in your case, it sounds like I'm an architect that has an idea, but I don't have the resources to be able to research or do whatever I need to do to implement it. Well, now I kind of do. And I'm experiencing that myself when it comes to, all sorts of this podcast. Like
Yeah,
I'm using AI to do basically everything aside from the actual conversations.
yeah, okay.
And honestly, I wouldn't be able to do it without it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
s-
it reduces the time needed on topics, right? And then the time is money, and then often the big companies or big firms have more of that available. So it's kind of a short circuiting kind of the traditional route on some tasks, I guess, is what you're
yeah,
kind of saying.
lowering the barrier to entry, evening the
Yeah,
playing field.
yeah. But then on the flip side, I guess on the flip side is in larger organizations or even any organization, there's it's potentially there'll be less entry level roles because some of the regular day-to-day tasks are less in demand, and that wide triangle of an office starts to kind of change shape a little bit. So
Okay, yeah. Well, our lawyer, guest spoke to that exactly, and
yeah,
that profession's really like in danger of there not being this kind of base of junior executives able to rise up through the ranks via experience. Is that something that is happening in your line of work as well? Is that why you speak to that?
it's not something I wouldn't say I'm specifically seeing it right now, but the in theory it makes sense that the more it develops, the less straightforward, simpler roles, which is how you kind of get into an office at first. There may be less, but that's not something that's AI specific because we've had the development of various technologies over the last 20 years that have changed the role that people have in offices. So they've become more BIM tech based rather than I mean it used to be hand drawing and it's just changed to be computer based now. So
Right. Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, look, the fans, huge fan base we have for this podcast, and the one of the parts that they love is the quick tips part of the podcast. So this is a
okay.
section in which I just want to get your practical day-to-day experiences and or advice on how to use these tools.
Yep.
So, without further ado, let's start with a general piece of advice that you would give to a friend, a colleague, loved one, enemy.
Okay, yeah, I guess but tip wise I would say that if you've got a problem or you're working through something, then it's good to always think, can I use this tool to make my day easier or have a better solution? I think that's something that's useful where because sometimes it's unexpected where, you're just cooking something and you can take a photo and you can say, well, what do I do with this? Or how do I it's just basically like having someone who's able to advise you on something that you're less knowledgeable on. So I always try and just think of something if I'm trying to solve a problem, okay, can it help me or not? So
Okay, so if you ever get stuck, just open up AI and see if it's got
yeah.
a solution. All right,
Yeah,
nice.
I mean I used to call my dad when my car broke down. Now I just take a photo of the engine and it'll give me the answer.
Pete, that's
That's
all
sad, isn't it?
the doomers and gloomers are saying,
I
yeah, well,
know.
no, you're not calling your dad as much.
No, no, I'm joking. I do still call him just for the sake of it.
Right,
Yeah,
but you don't
yeah.
need to talk about the engines anymore. Now you can
Yeah,
talk
less
about
less engine chat, yeah.
now you can talk about your feelings.
Yeah. Oh,
Finally.
yeah, finally.
Okay, that's nice. That's a nice general tip. All right, what about something more specific? Sometimes I call it a personal hack. Sometimes I've been known to call it your own personal superpower. What do
Okay.
you, yeah, do you have any kind of like more specific Peter Williams centric tips or hacks?
This is is this AI based or is this just
No, it's
general?
still AI based.
Okay.
The kind of, it's a another podcast I have, which is to do with your personal therapy session.
Well, this is an
Like in
AI.
terms,
Yeah.
again, AI related, like, I like, okay, so let's say for me personally, one superpower I have is taking
Mm,
screenshots, right? Like, I've I've learned, I don't know what it is on PC, but on Mac, Control Command Shift 4, and you can drag
mm,
over the screen,
mm,
and then press Command V, and you can paste it into the chat bot, and then it,
mm.
because it can see. I don't need to like copy and paste emails. I don't need to copy and paste images. Like I could just copy and paste what I have on the screen, put it into the
Yeah,
chat bot, and then it's able to give me feedback on whatever it is. And I don't need to explain. I don't need to give any context. I can just be like, "Hey, what do you think of my reply to this email?" You know,
yeah, yeah,
or what do you think of my design on this flyer? You know,
yeah,
so that's good. That's my own personal superpower. I think it's like it's it's an OP superpower.
yeah.
What about you?
Um, I mean, I guess my useful tip is I use it in terms of architecture. I use it for checking regulations. Basically, this isn't the most interesting topic, but
No, but go on.
you know,
People have to do
you
this sort of thing.
can. I mean, you know, usually you'd go find the regulations and you'd go through and you'd find that specific section. And at certain points, you know, you really need to still do that. But there's certain quick stuff that you can actually get a kind of a good steer on regulations by just asking it to look it up and to advise on a certain topic. So, but you still have to do the safety check. But it's a good hack day to
Yeah,
day, I find.
junior researcher vibes. All right, and we
Yeah,
are coming up to the end of the time. So, finally, a fun or unexpected use case that you have found you using AI for.
fun or unexpected use case. I mean, it's actually not. It's probably not that fun to everyone, but I've found it quite useful for investing, actually.
Okay, all right, interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. It's funny you should say that because there's a actual like leaderboard going on at the moment where
Oh yeah.
someone somewhere has given each AI model $100,000, and they've got like a leaderboard on which AI models are up and which ones are down. And I think
Which one's the winner?
Claude at the moment is in the
Oh
lead.
really?
I think it's 10% up
Wow. Okay.
compared to where it was. I remember seeing that Gemini 2.5 was above Gemini 3
Okay.
in
Yeah.
the investment, but I think it's quite early days yet. So
Yeah.
um, either way, it's an interesting little thing going on there. So go on,
I find it
which AI are you
useful.
using to do it, and tell me how you're doing it.
It's just ChatGPT I'm using, but I find it useful in terms of rather than just saying, you know, what should I do with my money? Where should I invest it? You can if there's a certain, you know, a certain topic or something that you invest in, you can still try and analyze it yourself, understand where you think the market's going to go, and then use it as a kind of logical sensory check. So one of the key things about investing is not to be too emotional, and obviously a an AI language model is great at not being that emotional. So you can get very good um, feedback on something that you're thinking of doing or investing in. So you can, you know, I'll just upload screenshots and say, this is what I think is going to happen. Can you give me a bit of, let's, you know, what are your thoughts on this? Act as an expert, and then it gives a kind of second opinion on the decision you're making.
Right, and you find it. And when did you start doing that? And how long you been doing that for?
Probably the last year or two. The last year or two.
Okay.
Um,
And you're doing
so
it more and more. So that's quite a long time to have a good sense of whether or not this is useful.
yeah, I'd say at least a year.
how has your like usage evolved in that time? Like your strategies of using the tool to help you?
Um, I guess sorry, say the question again. How's
Well, like I imagine when you first thought, okay, let's see if ChatGPT can give me any good feedback on this.
mm,
Maybe you went in and thought, okay, I'm just going to ask it what to invest in, and then you were like,
yeah,
actually, it's not very good at that.
yeah.
But how have your expectations evolved? And
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess I've become more specific on one certain thing that I'm investing in, and then it keeps hold of the knowledge of things you've asked before and where you want it to search for information to give you advice. So rather than it just scouring the net and getting any old input, there's certain websites that I've said, I want you to read this website and give me input based on what their thoughts are, not just a general, scrape across the internet. And then I'm more specific in terms of sharing screenshots, and I'll sketch the on the graph lines and then say this is what I think is going to happen. What are your thoughts? Or can you see this pattern? Because it's good at pattern recognition as well. So
Okay, interesting. And then do you then, and you sort of already said this, but I want to reiterate it.
yeah,
You then don't take it as verbatim. You don't take it as a sage,
no.
but rather you use it as a way of just bouncing ideas off to what did you call it? Like sensory check or
Safety check, yeah. So
safety check.
if I'm thinking of going in on something, I can use it as a bit of a can you give me your advice on this, and then I've got a friend of mine that I chat to about this topic as well, and I'll share with him the information he's giving me. I'll share with him what I think, and then he's not emotionally detached to that decision, so he can give a kind of third opinion.
Right. So it's just like more heads. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like two heads are better than one, two
yeah,
heads and a digital
and
mind
exactly,
are better
yeah.
than two heads.
Yeah, because he might read it and say like you're putting too much trust in this feedback it's giving, but so that's why I've asked a friend as well instead of just myself talking to it.
I've not spoken to anyone about this particular topic, like financial investment. I will say that the last guy I had on, he
Yeah,
was using it um, to explore his own finances.
yeah,
So, like personal financial management rather than investment. But he said he was uploading all of his um, credit card statements, and then he was getting it to analyze his trends of like
yeah, yeah.
what he's spending money
Oh, what
on.
he's spending it on, and then kind of yeah, that's quite useful.
Yeah.
Another one is I've been considering buying a place, and it's quite interesting to use for analyzing property. I don't know if you've had a realtor or estate agent on the
No, actually, I
podcast
hadn't even
before.
considered that, but that's a really good
Yeah,
idea. Go on. So
yeah,
how is that useful?
yeah. I mean, you get reports on buildings in terms of their maintenance and the condition of things, and then there's market reports. So you can upload a lot of information on essentially it's either a home or an investment, however you consider it, but it can then analyze it in terms of your needs quite objectively. So
Interesting. So something I want to just flag as like a watch out. I'm always like it always occurs to me when people are uploading lots of documents.
yeah,
So firstly, like a top tip is the lawyer. Again, keep going back to the lawyer, but I guess
yeah,
like
yeah.
there's some parallels
There's
here. Yeah.
similarities. Yeah,
So they obviously have to deal with like tons and tons of documents,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so the tool that they use is Notebook LM
Hmm.
because it's very good at it's a Google tool.
Okay, I haven't
It's
used
called
it.
Notebook LM,
Yeah.
and essentially it's like it's designed for people that are studying
Oh, okay. I've not used
mostly.
it. Yeah,
But you can tell it, I just want you to focus on these 5 documents, and
yeah. Okay,
it
that's
will
good.
only draw information from those 5 documents.
Yeah,
Now, the reason I bring it up is because my experience with ChatGPT, and of course, new models come out all the time, and I haven't experimented with the latest models. But my experience is that if you upload a few documents, it sometimes only looks at like the
yeah.
first few
Found that.
pages,
Yeah,
or
you have to kind of prod it and remind it to actually check this, and yeah, it does make a few mistakes when it's not fully incorporating all the information from all the
yeah.
documents. Yeah,
So I would it's either you have to like try and nudge it in the right direction, but I would just be really careful whenever getting it to give me a full like analysis of any document I put into ChatGPT. First, I'd
yeah,
probably do a few like to do a few checks, like tests, like
yeah,
what's on page 57 of this document, or where is the word alakazam used in this
yeah,
document, just to see whether it could like give me accurate feedback. But at this point in my AI evolution, I probably wouldn't even use ChatGPT. I'd use Notebook LM because I know
really, okay,
it's just the market leader and it's
yeah,
very kind of well reputed
yeah,
and used by global law firms as their go-to tool for
Is it
that.
confidential then? Because I mean, that's a topic we haven't spoke about too much, but a lot of offices are using kind of closed loop systems so that you're not sharing what you're doing live
Yeah,
with.
that's a good question. I think depending on, so the lawyer I spoke to, they have a partnership with Google, so Google's
Okay.
providing them with tools that they can use, and
Yeah.
I haven't got into the weeds about how they're creating a closed loop,
Yeah.
but I do know they have certain tools that their employees can use, and then certain tools that
Yeah. That's similar.
they're not supposed to use for like sensitive data.
Yeah, that's very
Um,
similar. Like, I think, a lot of the larger offices are using Copilot and various offshoot software that's closed loops. And then I think smaller offices are, I guess it's more open sourced information where they're sharing stuff because I think it's more difficult to have a closed loop system if you're not paying a significant amount, is it? Or
yeah, it gets really
I don't
tricky,
know.
doesn't it? Sort of
Yeah.
one of the like, you know, you can't have sensitive data going into these models that are online because the models can use them to train themselves. That
Yeah.
said, if I mean, look, personally, if you're like a sole trader, like these models, no one's going to fucking see this data because
Yeah.
it's going into an ocean
Yeah.
of other data that's being used to train the models. Like the odds of any of that sensitive information appearing anywhere is like
Yeah.
a gazillion to one.
Yeah.
But if you are, you know, Price Waterhouse Cooper, your whole reputation depends on being
Yeah,
secure, so you
that's what
can't do
people are
that.
paying for, basically. They're paying for the privacy of dealing with certain organizations. So you can't just be sharing things out with the rest. And there's also already different confidentiality agreements that are typically signed and in place. So you can't
Yeah.
just be sharing everything. So
But there are other ways and means. So another way that one, if you are like a smaller organization, a way to create so a therapist in my family is trying to figure out if he can upload his transcripts from his conversations, but
hmm
part of the code is that it has to be private. Now, my
yeah, yeah,
advice to him has been, well, you can get open source models like DeepSeek, the Chinese
yeah,
model, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
can you can host that locally in your organization or on your machine, and it
yeah,
doesn't connect to the internet. It's just completely self-contained. And in that
yeah.
scenario, that's just like having Word on your
Mm.
computer. Anything you put up into it is completely, is not going anywhere. So that would be my other piece of advice for anyone worried about,
But
you
with
know,
DeepSeek, is that a language model? Is it? Can
yeah,
you?
DeepSeek's a large
Yeah,
language model.
yeah,
It's developed in China. So online is
mm,
100% all of the various anxieties that any Chinese software
yeah,
brings.
yeah,
But it is open source, and what open source means is that you can download it
yeah.
and you can own the entire thing yourself, and it can be self-contained within whatever machine you put it on.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's useful. Yeah, I guess it is available for a lot of smaller offices to do what you're saying then and have a closed kind of system. But it's just I guess that will take a bit of time for various size offices to develop those systems.
totally to figure
So
it out, and like, is it
yeah,
worth it? And also,
yeah,
everything's evolving so
yeah,
quickly. By the end of 2026, you could have your model might be just 10 times better than the current one you just downloaded and invested a shit ton of money in trying to
yeah.
make closed off. So, I mean,
Has
so,
has there have you had many conversations about I mean more about is it AGI, general intelligence?
oh, AGI.
AGI, because
Wow,
that's a whole, this we're talking about tiddlywinks here compared to the
now we're
scale
getting
of which
now we're getting
these things,
into the fun stuff,
the
aren't
big stuff
we?
now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, say AGI. I mean, I was reading in The Economist like yesterday. Um, you know, Sam Altman thinks that we achieved AGI like a year ago, and it sailed on
Yeah.
by. The leader of Anthropic and of some other kind of famous model, they
Mm.
think it's at the end of 2026. I think the leader of Anthropic and Elon Musk said that. Meanwhile, the leader of Gemini, Demis Hassabis,
Mhm.
he says it's not going to be for another 10 years. So this term is like nebulous. It's sort of a bullshit term.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
What does it mean? But if it means, and I think personally, I don't think it will ever. I think it's just a marketing
Hmm.
term that doesn't make any sense when you really think about what we are dealing with here, in my opinion. So let's start with just like the general, what do people mean when they mean AGI? The AI can do anything that a human can do. Okay, cool. And you're right. If an AI ever comes along that can do anything that a human can do, it'll
Yeah.
be unbelievable. And
Yeah.
they do believe that's within the next couple of years. But equally, these things can already do some amazing things, right? And the next step beyond AGI is ASI. Have you ever heard of that term?
I think I did hear something
So
about it.
AGI is artificial general intelligence.
Yep.
ASI is artificial super intelligence, right? And it
Just throw a
strikes
super in front of it. Just add a super in.
right because the idea is that once you get to AGI, it can then improve. It can do anything that a human can do,
Yeah.
including code, and it can then start working on its own code, and then it
Mm.
can, it can just be working on that 24/7 and explode. Then you would have what they call an intelligence explosion, and
Yeah.
then we have artificial super intelligence. However, I think
Starts to sound a
as
bit scary, that.
yeah, it's starting to get very existential.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I think with my incredible computer science background and understanding of all of these things, but I think it's becoming increasingly obvious to me, at least, that well, first, it's already a general intelligence, right? That's why I'm able to speak to architects, lawyers, teachers, healthcare professionals, you
Mm.
name it, electricians, because anyone can use this tech. So it's already has a general intelligence. It's generally applicable. And
Yeah.
then and then all of the things that it can do, anything that it can actually do, it can already do at a far superior level than a human. When we're talking about, you know, give me the, I don't know, the building regulations in Chinese, Japanese, Mongolian, and Portuguese, and they'll do
Yeah.
it like that. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
human can do that.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
and so it's got this. It's sort of in this weird space. I think they call it jagged. It's like a jagged intelligence at the moment,
Okay.
right? So it has this jagged. I mean, they say jagged general intelligence, but I was there's a jagged super intelligence in the areas that it excels in.
Hmm.
It's shot off in like it's extremely capable, but in the areas it doesn't excel in, it's like way worse than a human.
Okay. Yeah. So it has. I mean, it's the unpredictability of it, which is what we kind of started at the start of the conversation.
Right,
Is that that's the weakness, really?
and maybe the unique thing about humans is that we just have this broad intelligence that's pretty good at a whole lot of ton of things, but
Yeah.
also and maybe the other piece of the puzzle that isn't, and maybe will never get baked into these AIs, is that we are just autonomous. We have
Mm.
drive, we have
Yeah.
feeling, we have needs, and we need to have those needs met. And all of that creates a sort of unpredictable, those are all these kind of like this special alchemy that feeds
Hmm.
into our intelligence. And
Mm.
and and even as I say that, there are people out there that have just there's a new kind of model making waves called Claudebot, or just been rebranded as Maltbot. Have you heard about this?
No. What's that?
So Maltbot is it's like a build on Claude code. So
Mhm.
Claude code is what people are using to vibe code now. It's like the best one. It's like the one that people like the best. And
Yeah.
you can give it a task and it'll work on your computer until that task is done. Right? Now, some bright spark out there has figured out that you can also give it like an autonomous sort of like make your own decisions, go away, like react to what's coming in, and then
Mhm.
choose what the right circumstances are, and then go and do the thing without being prompted to do it.
Wow.
Right. And so in a fun twist, someone has now taken Claude. So all of the nerds are like using it. It sounds like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't played with it myself. Apparently, it's very risky.
I
But
think. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
one group of one nerd, excuse the term, but has created a social network in which you can only join this social network if you are one of these malt bots, right? And on this
So they're
social
all
net,
joining it.
so people are like giving their malt bot access to this social network. You can only post on it if you are a malt bot. So all these malt bots are now posting and having these conversations with each other, which are all getting very sort of like creepy and existential.
Definitely.
the headlines are that like, oh, one of them formed their own religion, and they're getting people to like subscribe to the religion, and then they're having like existential conversations about, oh, should we form our own language so that the humans can't
I'm
understand
just
us?
glad they don't have bodies right now.
Yeah, well, that's next. That's the physical. They call that
Yeah.
physical AI, and that's what's
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast.
it's a whole nother podcast, and that might also be one of the unique kind of pieces of the puzzle that the current AIs are lacking, that which are not enabling them to reach this like AGI as we imagine it, or at least as
Yeah.
I think Demis Hassabis, the founder of DeepMind, imagines it. When he says it's 5 years out, 10 years out, I think that's because he sees it as there being these fundamental things that are required for them to be able to do whatever a human can do, and one of them may well be a physical body. So,
Yeah.
anyway, you got me going there, Pete.
No, that was interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, good. I'm
Loved it.
glad. All right, mate. We really have run over now, so thank you so much for giving me your time. Before we go, is there anything that you want to plug? Anything, anywhere that listeners can find you, find your work?
Yep. I can be found. My website is www.k1-architecture.com. And then Instagram is Peter Z Williams. If anyone wants to follow me. I find there's quite a lot of people that ask about, was it difficult to relocate as an architect from the UK to North America? And so that's kind of a topic I find that if anyone's got any questions on that, I'm happy to help out.
Great. All right, fantastic. And all of those will be in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
So, with that, thanks so much for joining me, Pete.
great. Thanks a lot, Bobby. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time on It's Not the End of the World, unless it really is the end of the world.